Hello there, I have a giant ground screw in my hand and it weighs actually nothing, but it can hold up to 9 tons of static mass on it. So why did we choose them? Just because they are cheap. Each of them costs 19 euros. The installation was super easy and I installed them by myself. No machinery, just twisting into the ground. Why not traditional concrete poles? Just because we don't have an electricity to mix the concrete and to make an armature into them. So that's it. It stands for almost a year.
So I invite you to watch how we installed these ground screws and then the ground construction of the wooden foundation. As with many works at this house, I did everything in archaic, ancient way. I didn't have a laser level. So the work started with wooden sticks and a thick thread. We planned the location of the house in consultation with my father-in-law. He said that the house should be no closer than the 3 meters to the neighbor's fence. Nor did we want to cut down any trees or plants. True, we transplanted one bush to another place. To be honest, I only knew the house would be 5 by 5 meters, but I didn't fully know how room layout and the interior will be. When I needed the ground screws, they were already 30% more expensive. I didn't think they would all fit in my Opel Vectra car, but they did. As a told, each of them cost me 19 euros. Maybe we trusted ourselves too much without renting an electrical appliance to turn the ground screws. But when we tried to screw them into the ground, we realized that it was possible to do it by hand. Using long screws and metal pipes, we alternately and together with the father-in-law threaded the ground screws. Thank God it was rainy spring and the ground was heavily soaked and very soft, so we even threaded 8 ground screws in the first day. Over the next 3 days I screwed up the rest alone. A total of 21 ground screws. But looking at their density at the middle of the foundation, I realized that the store that sold me the ground screws was right, advising me by calculating of drawing of the house. I needed 25 ground screws, so I bought an extra 4. And here you see the image of how I came up with the ability to thread the ground screws efficiently, using only my own strength. This method is just like using a gearbox. So I became a workhorse for a few days, but I didn't have to bend my back. Occasionally measuring the ground balls with a spirit level just to check if everything is okay. So finally my ordered wood for the foundation arrived. The main frame was made of 15 by 15, 6 meters long impregnated pine beams. Who else will help unload everything, if not the best friend Julius, with whom we have been playing in bands since childhood. After unloading the beams in the morning, we split up after work. I suffered an injury that day lifting heavy wood, and although I had a back pain, I came in the evening to test how my new Makita tool works. It worked great. That day I realized that somehow without my friend Julius we would have to try carry those beams on the poles, even with my back pain. But here too I took tricks and carried the heavy wood, holding it with a synthetic belt on my shoulders. I have seen the beam joining method on the other YouTube channels, and I liked it. It wasn't difficult to do such woodwork. But in general, it was strange to touch the timber of construction. For all the wood to which I had come in contact all my life were musical instruments. As you see, traditional family weekends took place on the construction site as well. Everything is integrated with each other. One of the better tips I received that day was that I need to remove the bark of the wood because it could be inhabited by worms. As our ancestors have said, measure it 9 times and on the 10th time, cut. I applied an additional antiseptic and impregnant at the joints of the beams. And it was the first time we felt walking in our cabin. Climbing on the beams seemed like we were very tall. And the next thing was that I had to come up with a method to mark the places in the wood that would need to be drilled in order to bolt the beams to the poles using M12 screws. The beams are now seated on the M12 bolts and can all be secured with wood screws. After assembling the main frame, I came up with a look at how to fit the foam sheets for insulation. I used 5 by 15 centimeters boards for the inner frame. Then I nailed the narrow wooden beams for bedding the foam. Just halfway through assembling the foundation frame, I wanted to lay a geotextile film on the ground. It is a relatively inexpensive material that protects the foundation from sprouting grass and other plants. It also stabilizes the soil. I also spared no investment in rodent protection. It's a braided steel net that I shot with a staple shooter. It wasn't the easiest job because I had to slip under a foundation about 30 centimeters high and do it in limited motion like an astronaut in a space station. But now I am calm that no mice will nest in a foam. How good to have friends with a big truck. Even with the adventure of losing goods on the road, we reach our garden with 6 bags of foam. For some, it may seem that the thickness of the foundation insulation is too small. But after a winter that was down to minus 15 degrees of Celsius and more, I can assure you that this is enough. Sometimes I took my daughter to the construction. Of course, she's still too small to help, support items or bring them. But in part I just worked as a babysitter after her school. Sometimes we stopped work to eat pizza and talk. She sometimes asks, "Dad, what to do for me?" But when I brought her to construction, she was able to play with the remnants of the materials right here on the foundation. She liked this game. And still, without not knowing what the vapor barrier is, for some reason I realized that I had to protect the entire foundation with an aluminized film from above. How good that we did it before screwing the plywood boards. In the picture, of course, my father-in-law helps. The rainy season has begun, and after every work we have tried to protect the foundation from moisture in every way possible. My best friend Julius visits us again in the heat of the work to cool us down with a cold beer, and I screwed the last impregnated plywood board to the foundation. Looks like a scene for musicians. In the past, I thought it would be the hardest part of building a house, but later I faced much bigger challenges. So wait for the new Seagull House series and don't forget to subscribe us.